just maybe it has
Good evening and welcome to this working session of the Lakeville Area Schools Board of Education. This meeting is being audio recorded, so please make sure that you are speaking loudly and clearly and the microphones can pick you up. Just so that we know who's in attendance, we'll go around the room, say your name and your position. And I'll start. I'm Kim Baker, Board Chair.
Bill Hogan, Executive Director of Business Services.
Brenda Albrecht, Executive Director of Administrative Services.
Brian Thompson, Board of Education.
Emily McDonald, Assistant Superintendent.
David Anderson, Board of Education.
Terry Lynn, Board of Education.
Carly Anderson, Board of Education.
Dave Haveman, Executive Director of Student Services.
Elida Kane, Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning.
Judy Kelleher, Board of Education.
Bree Shinley, Board of Education.
Doug Gonzalez, Superintendent of Schools.
All right, thank you very much. To start our discussion tonight, we're going to start with the board legislative platform. And Judy, do you have an update on that?
So I think this is only on here because in December, we always do the delegate assembly piece with the Minnesota School Board. And they usually start sending out messages like at the end of September, maybe the beginning of October, asking for districts to submit legislative resolutions to be voted on. And that doesn't really give you enough time to think about them, write them up and prepare them, and then meet and talk at the board level about them. So I guess I asked to have this put on here earlier in the year so we could start talking about it. So I guess my recommendation would be from the administration and from the board members that over the next few months, if we think of things or that we would like to have legislatively pursued by our Minnesota School Board lobbyists, we should know about it and then we can start writing up. There's a special, isn't there a, Emily, I know you've done this in the past, there's a special form that they have you complete, right? And so just with the documentation and the argument for why you think this is important and the data behind it. And then as a board, we can discuss it and we can submit it on behalf of the board. So that's what this is on here for, just to make sure that throughout the year we're thinking about things. There have been some things that our lobbyists are really active and really good down at the state. So things that we need, they worked really hard the last couple of years on that cross-subsidy piece for special education. So just keep it in mind, and then maybe in a couple of months or something, we can revisit to see if there's anything out there that we want to start documenting and preparing so that by the time it's time to turn in resolutions, we actually have time to prepare and do it.
I would probably recommend you don't wait just a couple of months because I know there's some legislative meetings that superintendents are attending in the next couple of weeks. So
Yeah.
some folks already are putting together some legislative platforms. So we probably want to take the next couple of weeks, so a month to
beyond the
do it.
resolutions?
And then get ready. If you have thoughts or ideas that you want turned in,
Yeah.
we're probably looking at the end of February, beginning of March. Because I want to say the first week in February, I know there's already a legislative platform meeting for, I think, AMSD.
Yeah, so MSBA does that too. So there's two different things that they do. One, each of these groups, AMSD, MSBA and stuff, they all develop actual legislative platforms. I think MSBA maybe already has it, but we've also asked those groups to kind of work together so they're all aligned as well. And then closer to the end of the year is when the resolutions come into play that start becoming lobbyist efforts and stuff. So that would be the one that we wait on for a few months. But as far as the legislative platform, do we have any idea? Do they have any kind of platform started?
I think they do. I can go and try to find it. I haven't received anything lately. Have you seen anything, Kim?
From MSBA or AMSD, what their platforms are?
Not yet. We just got something in the mail this last week.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anything.
They haven't got
And I think that's why they're asking also for us to put some, if there's something that you as a board feel strongly about, you need to send it to them and they use that as part of their legislative platform as well, if they get multiple people to do it. So that's why I was saying probably not wait a couple months. If there's thoughts or ideas that you have over the next month or so, we probably put some of that together. But if there is something out there, we'll get it for you.
Yeah, and the other piece to that though is once they do craft what their platforms are, they like the school boards to be educated on it, so we can advocate for those positions as well.
And then for special ed, Pacer has their own day at the Capitol for legislative lobbying for people to go. That's usually in March.
All right.
So what's the takeaway? Like, what's the action item?
I would say just watch your email and the mailings that you're getting from MSBA on what those legislative platform ideas are coming around, because they'll share like what other districts have come up with too. But if you have something that you think they need to consider too, then there's a form that you can fill out.
Okay.
If there's something that you feel strongly about, then I would say we need to bring it to the board, because it normally comes from the board as a whole. It doesn't normally come from an individual.
Gotcha.
So if it's
Yeah.
something that you as a board feel strongly that you'd like advocated for, put it together over the next few weeks, watch for it, and then it comes to the whole board to be able to push that forward.
So I have a question. One of the things I think we've been talking about is just these mandates that have come down, and we don't know how long we have funding for those things, like through 26 or whatever. Is that something that we could be
I
pushing?
know that's already one legislative
Oh.
platform. I know that's already on one group that I'm talking about, but I think if you feel strongly about it, I would make sure it's noted.
Well, that would have considerable impact on the district.
Absolutely.
Right.
All right, so if there's no further questions on that, we'll move on to the board calendar. You should have a copy of the calendar for the rest of this school year, and then the calendar for the 24-25 school year. As we talked about amending some of our meeting dates to allow for some community engagement opportunities that we're going to be exploring. Kim had mentioned that there is a date in March that we want to make sure that we pay attention to. That would be March 12th, because that is a township election for Eureka Township. So then that would fall under the statute that we can't meet between 6 and 8 that night. So then we would have to change our meeting time for that. I think that's 24-25, isn't it?
It's this coming.
It's 23, 24.
I'm looking at 12. Oh, yep, there it is, sorry.
On this side.
I don't have my glasses on. Old, anyway, didn't look like it to me. So we need to decide if we want to meet prior to 6 to 8 or after 8 on March 12th, which is a working session day.
Or choose another day.
Or choose another day, yes. Any thoughts on that?
I'm flexible, whatever your group wants to
Should we
do.
just meet on the
4 to
19th?
6,
Right,
or meet on the 19th.
right.
I mean, I feel like it's been hard for some people to get here before 6, and it might just be better just to push it.
Because we would have public engagement as a stakeholder session on that day as well. So then it's not just for like you're pushing it earlier so that we can provide that time for the public too. So we just want to move it to the 19th and keep our times the same?
Mhm.
Everybody in agreement on that? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, can I, just a quick note,
Sure.
I was at work today and realized we had an accessibility meeting today, and just wondering for those that might be colorblind, how they know the difference between a working session and a regular meeting. So
Because it's red and blue.
can you just like, does it make sense to have the ones in the working session in like a square? I don't know, I'm just throwing it out, that's all. All right.
It's a valid consideration. We do have the dates listed on the side right with the working session. Isn't that how it comes up on the page? No?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's on the calendar too.
Okay.
It's in multiple places, but we should look at it now.
Any other issues looking over the calendar with meeting dates for the remainder of this year or into next year?
The only thing I would just want to advocate for is we kind of, and probably this is just a meeting for the policy, or not the policy, the public engagement committee, is just that we make some decisions around kind of the frequency of, because I think one of the things that we've heard from the public is you're decreasing your number of meetings, and really the purpose of taking one of those away is so that we can actually do something in the community. And so, I mean, I don't know if people are willing to do it monthly, just in replacement of a board meeting, or that I would just like us to decide that
Okay.
soon.
Yeah, makes sense. Think that, do you want to decide it now, or do you want to wait till like the committee meets and they come back with some recommendations?
Well, I have my own opinion. I feel like we should just replace it and be really intentional about meeting with different groups in the community. But that's just my opinion.
And the policy committee does meet every Wednesdays from like 6:30 until 8:30.
Every other.
Every other, so, okay. And we'll be meeting tomorrow, so for those who want to join, it's exciting.
I think that what she's specifically saying is that we took away those board development sessions and those were just for public awareness, things that we were doing, trainings and different sessions that we were using to kind of catch up new board members and some team building together so that we could have opportunities to engage within our community. The first one that we had decided to do is coming up in January, which is the Lions Club Community Day event, correct?
Yep.
Yep, and that's this weekend?
Nope, it's the last weekend of January. I think it's the
27th.
27th Saturday.
Yeah, yeah.
At the Heritage Center. across-
Right,
yeah.
right. So what Carly's asking for is a commitment that we would try to find something each month to do in the community to replace that meeting. So it's not like us meeting together doing that, it's us as a team doing something within our community to promote engagement. So she's asking if we can kind of decide on that now, so that'll help steer the public engagement committee on what they need to plan for. Make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
I agree.
Once a month? Is that what you're saying too, Terry?
Yeah, I agree with, we need to, we want to get more involved, but we need to get a system so we know that we're involved, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And to what degree are we involved?
Right.
And yeah, we can start with that, but we need to meet as a group too to,
Right.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I think
need
if
some
we
parameters from the board on that.
Right.
If we decide on the frequency, then we can start planning.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So Bree, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Good with once a month?
Yep.
Okay. Brian?
Sounds good.
Okay. Dave? Judy? All right. There we go, guys. So
Let's go.
once a month. All right.
Good.
Doesn't have to be on a Tuesday night.
Right, because I have 9/17 on
Right,
the first
yeah.
Tuesday of every
Yeah.
month.
Right.
It has to be on Tuesday.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Sounds good.
For
So-
you, it has to be.
We'll go ahead and
Yeah,
move
for
on
me,
to
thank
our
you.
board self-assessment. So all members of the board took a survey from the MSBA in October. This was part of our board goals that we developed for the year, and we were using this as a baseline to see where we're starting from, and then we will take this survey again in July, and we'll discuss it more thoroughly at our board retreat that we do that time of the month, to kind of talk about how we've grown, what are the things we need to work on, and just how, what our focus is going to be for the next year. So with the baseline data that I sent to you on Sunday night, I went through each question, and there's 31 total questions. That's a lot to go over in one working session. I was hoping that you would take some time to look over the data and kind of make some reflections on that, and give us something to kind of steer for over the course of the year, and on some other things that we need to work on. There was one question that everybody totally agreed on. We had 7 out of 7, one question, so I'm gonna say that was great.
One
It's
whole
like the
question,
last
one whole question?
Yes,
One question,
one.
7 out of 7. But then it's also, you have to take into account how those questions are rated, with strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree, or don't know. So there were some where we were all in the agree, but some were strongly agree and some were agree. So we can count that as a win too. Like, it's not all a division. Terry, did you, last time we talked about some of the board things, you did this great reflection, and I know I kind of touched base with you a little bit and asked if you had any reflections to share from the board assessment, because you do such a good job of kind of summarizing things.
That's a tough one.
I know, I'm putting you on the spot.
I still think we need to work very, very diligently on trust.
Yeah.
I think that would eliminate a lot of the concerns that are showing up in that
Yep.
evaluation, and I'm not sure how we do that. We just need to work with each other, I guess, and with the district office, because I think there's some lack of trust
Right.
in that area too. That would go a long ways, I think, to improve the situation, because I was kind of shocked by it. Then I thought, well, yeah, this was done back in October, and I thought things are better now, but I could be wrong, you know.
I think we need to be fair to each other too, because we have new members. We've
Right.
dealt with issues that are hot topics that are hard to deal with. And also, I mean, I agree with Terry, like my reflection from all of this, like I go back to, as a parent, like what I think inclusion is and how I really feel like the bottom line is that's how we treat each other, right? And as a board, that's kind of what I kept coming back to too. It's trust, and it's hard to build trust if we're not just kind of treating each other with kindness and respect,
Yes.
understanding that we can disagree at the table and still walk away, and it's okay. And I know that I want to be fair to everyone, because trust is not something that's easily earned. It's hard to build, it takes time to do it, and the fact that we are seeing improvement from these scores from October is telling me that we're working towards that. I do feel like the opportunity to do things in the community as in public engagement away from the board table that the public engagement committee is working on is a good way to start doing some of those, because this is where a lot of the stress happens, right? So if we can kind of understand that we're all individuals and we all have families and we're all doing these things and kind of work to figure out who we are as people, then it'll be a little bit easier to build some of that trust. But I've talked a lot, so what are
Yeah.
other people's thoughts?
My only other comment would be too, that I know that we say this, that we put kids first, but I'm not seeing that in our meetings. It seems like it's more, it's not putting them second, it's just kind of not ignoring them. It's just that the decisions we need to think about how decisions affect our kids. And I know we all say that, but I think we need to really live that. That's all I have.
Brian, I know you had some thoughts on the self-assessment. Do you care to share them?
Yeah, it's self-assessment.
And some particular questions that you had pointed out.
I did, yep, so I shared, I think there were a few questions, I think there were about 8 of them that might be worthy of discussion, but maybe, I actually might propose that maybe we do a minor offsite to talk through these as self-assessments versus trying to discuss them at this particular table. I did appreciate that you shared it out earlier so that we have a kind of a holistic view of the 31 questions, and you know, we can use today's session to talk through them, but no action item's gonna come out of it. And
Nope.
so, in my mind, like if we really wanna be successful in leveraging this data element, part of our 2024 goals would be putting together what are your top 3 things you want to do as a board to improve on. And it might make more sense to have a separate session to further dive deeper into these assessments and pick out the top 3 that we want to make improvements on, and then go from there. But there are glaring gaps in my mind of the disparity of how folks view how things are going within those 31 questions.
Yep. I would
My
agree with
thoughts.
that. Carly, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think before I was on this board, I had very strong opinions about how this board should function, and I feel very similarly, and I think the biggest issue I see is if we don't trust each other and we don't trust the leadership, then we are in a bad position, and that is going to be very apparent to the public, and that is what I think is happening. So my feelings about it is we are in a serious situation and we need to figure out how to work better together because we are at the top, and if we are not showing how to function well despite having different opinions about things, then we can't expect anyone down the chain to do so. So I feel like we've got to figure that out.
And with that, that ultimately impacts the classroom. So, I attended a National School Board Association meeting a few years back, and they talked a lot about how what happens at the board eventually reflects into the classroom. And through the morale and with the attitude of the staff and the community. So Carly, I agree with you 100% on all of that. I think we have goals in place right now for the school year that we established them back in August, and we really haven't done anything with engagement and meeting trying to develop KPI or metrics around those and really doing anything toward them, and they weren't very difficult goals to establish action items on and taking action on. So I think the sooner we do that, the better off we are. But I think one of the biggest issues that we have that I see time and time again happening at the board table is we sit here in these meetings and we talk and agree to no surprises at the table, and every meeting has a surprise, and that should not be the case. And until that happens, the trust will not be built between members and the people at the board table and in our community. So we have to start agreeing to or doing what we're agreeing to, and our chair needs to hold people accountable that does otherwise. So those are the things that I see that need to be, and they're easy things to do, and it's just the accountability piece, and we're not doing anything to hold anybody accountable to anything at this point.
Bree, do you have anything to add?
I looked through it, yes. Yeah, there are some inconsistencies, and, you know, I look on my experiences, what I've had done, you know, as a coach and a teacher, and just seeing what happens, you know, on a team level. I feel we are really inconsistent in that, and, you know, practicing what we preach, right? I mean, as a coach, there's no I in team, and we need to really focus on coming together and making great decisions, and proof that there's a lot of inconsistencies there that we need to really work on. So, everybody else says kind of the same things, and at least we can all agree that there are things that we need to work on.
Dave?
I'm good for now.
So we can agree that there's inconsistencies and we have things that we need to work on. Brian has made a proposal that we meet and go through this more thoroughly at a different time. We do have a calendar in front of us, so if the board would like to set a meeting date to go over those things, and spend more time going through question by question and looking at our goals and trying to figure out how we can align some of our work based on the things that we need to work on and recognition of our goals, then I'm open to that as well.
Would it be more efficient using our time, have everybody pick out 3 areas that they think are really important, give those to you so we get that in 31 down to something manageable? Because if we're going to sit here and look at 31, it's going to take forever.
Right.
So I suggest that's what we do.
Everybody pick 3?
Yeah, or 4, or whatever you decide. Doesn't matter.
Makes sense to me.
Well, I would want that to be kind of, like we're saying, kind of action-oriented about kind of what, so I think we all get the theme of, the themes that are emerging from this
Right.
self-assessment.
pretty obvious.
It's obvious. And so I guess I personally would want to focus on what are we going to do about this? So the public engagement thing, I do think will help our board. I think it's,
And it's one of our goals.
yes, and, you know, nobody's gonna argue that we had a really rough year, and we face different challenges this year, for sure. But I think this is an opportunity this year to really try to come together, both the board and with the DO, and try to bridge some of those gaps. And so I would just ask that we not necessarily dissect the responses, but more, given the themes of maybe what, not necessarily what are the what are three themes that are emerging from this data, and what are we gonna do about it?
I like that approach better.
So themes and then action.
Yes,
Okay.
And suggest actions,
right.
Suggested actions.
and then get together and go over it.
Okay. So that,
That would be a lot faster, I think.
it would be, are people comfortable doing that as part of a working session, or would you like Brian's proposal and we meet at a separate time?
Well, I'm gonna be mindful, we don't have to have a separate meeting, it's up to you guys. So we can, an offsite is fine, we can have a longer working session, it's up to you guys. But I'm just saying that I don't think this particular time, we're gonna be useful in creating an action plan out of that, that's all. I mean, so I'm writing some notes and I'm listening to what folks are saying, and there are a lot of themes out of those 31 assessment questions that we can definitely distill and put together an action plan around it. But at the end of the day, as board members, we are representatives of the community, and with that, we're gonna have differences. We're gonna have different points of views, we're gonna have different decisions, different values, and different decisions on how you wanna vote. But at the end of the day, if we can get alignment, and maybe that's where some of the gaps are, if we can get alignment on what is the process to facilitate decisions that need to be made. And so, a couple bullets that I wrote down here where we need to have accurate and data that's relevant. We need to have time for board members to ask questions. We need to have enough time where board members, all of them, feel comfortable enough that they have enough information to make a valid decision, and then we vote. And all of that needs to be in a very safe, open, non-judging environment, and so that we can all move forward. I mean, it's not rocket science, but I understand that the 31 questions that we have some discrepancies, but if we can get alignment on a process, maybe then it won't be as challenging, so. But
I'm not sure where a process is going to make me be more trusting of others. That's a interpersonal things that we need to work on.
Not necessarily, because,
What?
I mean, to Judy's point about accountability, just because it doesn't happen at the board table in public doesn't mean I'm not following up with members individually. That's a trust issue. But that's also like, if that's not how the board wants me to respond to individual board members, then maybe there's a process thing that we need to talk about with that. What's the accountability that board members want when you're not sticking to these things? Because we want to make sure that we're making the right decisions for kids, and we're putting kids first, not our personal differences.
Agree?
I do want to acknowledge that trust does play a part, and it can. But again, you are to vote based on the decision at hand, and like I don't know if this is going to come off wrong, but do I have to vote? Do I have to trust with Bree based on whatever decision that needs to be had to make a decision that I think is in the best interest for our community? And so I again don't want to not acknowledge that trust is important, but also acknowledge like I'm voting on the decision or on the proposal that needs to be had. And so
But I think you're
maybe I'm
only
mistaken.
thinking about the trust with each other, and we also are talking about the trust with our district office, because if I don't trust what Bill is, the information he's presenting to me, then that's going to impact my vote.
Agreed.
And that comes out,
Yeah.
it comes across as questioning, are they doing the right thing?
Right.
If you don't trust the professionals to do their thing and you question them all the time, that's
I'm
definitely
sorry,
not
you were just sitting
trusting.
beside me.
But the other piece to that, though, is you're making a vote on what is best for our students in the school district, not what's best for the community. You're here representing and voting on what's best for the school system and for our students and our kids. And so that's the approach you have to have. So making sure that you're doing that, because we all have our connections in the community and we're all in our little bubbles, and that's why this engagement piece is so important, to get out and interact with people that don't think like the people in your bubble or that don't have the same issues. And You know, you can go from one part of the district to the other part of the district, and homes are different, and lives are different, and faces are different. We have to get to know what all those areas of our community are like, so that when we're making decisions, we're making the best decision we can for our students in the schools. So I just want to make sure that we have that frame of mind here. We're representatives of the community doing what's best for our public schools and our students, not for the community.
So where do we want to go with this?
Well, we have a proposal to meet at a different time and go through things a little bit more thoroughly. We have a proposal that if we do that, we're going to look at the themes and then create action items around it, and probably look at our board goals too, so that we're not going through 31 questions intensely and creating more tension between us. I do feel like it would be better to have a meeting where we're just going through this and doing those items. That would mean finding some time to do that within our calendar. So are people open to adding that in as kind of like a board retreat time where we're just working on this for us? I guess that would be the question posed to members.
I want it focused.
Yes.
In my mind, it would be the theme thing, and then also have your themes, have your ideas, send them to you. We all get them early
Right.
and look them over, so when we do meet,
Yep.
we've got the same base to look at.
Yep.
Does that
And
make sense?
I can compile all that data that people send and kind of make a summary and pull out the 3 or 4 main themes.
Does that work for people? Okay.
Yeah, okay. So do we want to look at a date so we can put that on the calendar?
All right, Thursday, February 15th, 7 PM.
I am not here that week.
I'm on a boat someplace.
I'll be with you.
Okay.
I think sooner rather than later, because it does, when we have issues going on that we need attention, which in the district, we have a lot of things going on right now, some things can get pushed to the back burner.
Tuesday, January 30th, 7 PM.
What time?
7 o'clock.
I'm fine
How
with
about
that.
6?
6 would be better.
I'm out of town.
You're on town? There goes
Gotta
the
give me more than 2 weeks.
What about the 6th?
February 6th?
6th of what, February?
I can do February 6th, but I have 9/17 first. I can do it after.
Which would be what, 6 o'clock?
6:37.
I'm not able to meet that night either.
Can we do Monday instead?
Ooh, I think that's a football night.
Oh my gosh.
The 5th. I mean, isn't the Super Bowl February week? Ish.
Sunday.
Oh, Sunday, okay.
I say it would be on Monday.
I can do Monday, the 5th.
I can do Monday.
Monday the 5th?
Monday the 5th?
What time?
6?
6? I like it.
All in favor?
We gotta
We
make a
don't
decision.
Let me see if I'm back. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
Oh, you say that like you wish you
Judy, you're
weren't.
back?
No.
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Sorry.
I can do Monday, yes.
Judy, you can do Monday?
Hmm?
Okay. All right.
So send you, go through the stuff.
When do you,
Sorry.
Does that work for you?
Yeah. I was going to say,
What
you
time
may
did
want to
you
give a
say?
timeline on
6
what information.
on the
you're
5th.
yeah,
gonna
that's what
use
she's
so I
gonna
can
ask
turn
me.
it back around.
Yep. So considering that today is the 16th, if you could take some time, this week and over the weekend to kind of look through that data, find 3 themes, maybe some ideas for action items that you'd like to see come out of that, and have those to me, I would say by the 26th. That'll give me some time to kind of, work through that, and kind of summarize that information, and then I'll try to get it back to you, so you have time to look it over too, before that 5th date. Does that work? Like by the 26th, which is next Friday?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, perfect. All right.
then if we're gonna see each other on the 27th, so anybody that hasn't gotten the
Well,
information
we'll
will be held
remind you,
accountable on the
yeah.
27th.
We can yell at them maybe.
Yes.
All right, so the next part of our agenda is upcoming recommended action. So these items, items A, B, and C, are things that we're going to be presented information on, and then there'll be things that we need to vote on at our next regular board meeting. So we'll start with item A, which is program of studies, and that is Elida King.
All right, well, good evening, Dr. Van Zyl, members of the board, Chair Baker, members of the board. Thank you for having me here tonight. As Kim said, my name is Elida King. I'm the Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning, and I'm excited to discuss updates and changes to the program of studies for school year 24-25. Just to get started, though, I do want to thank Holly Stanke and Marnie Birkbaum from Lakeville North, deans there, Kristen Johnson from Lakeville South, Margaret Gare from Pathways and Lakeville Online. They helped us facilitate this process, and it's quite a lengthy process, as you probably saw from our timeline. And lastly, I want to thank Jillian Haveman, who is our point of contact from the comms department, who has spent hours, which is probably equated to days and weeks, updating this program of studies every year for us. So just acknowledging the hard work that all of them have done. So each year we come to the Board of Education to share any notable shifts, any new courses or changes that we have listed in our high school course offerings. On January 4th, you should have received in your administrator update a one-pager. It was a little bit longer than a one-pager, listing out our timeline, our 23-24 program of studies, just for your reference, and then the draft of the 24-25 program of studies. And along with that, the new titles, the new course descriptions for what our new students will have access to. As you saw on the timeline, the updates start right away in September. We start working with teachers who want or need to make any shifts and changes. Sometimes it's a course, sometimes it's just slightly editing their course description because they found an editing error, and that brings us here today. And then, as Kim mentioned, next week you guys will have your vote, and then that will release our program of studies to our students, launching the registration process, which then impacts class sizes and registration and FTEs and all of that. So it's all very timely. On January 8th, 8 of our high school students presented to the Teaching and Learning Advisory Council. I know Terry was there. Thank you for your attendance. And they presented the new courses and updates to our program of study. We had really great feedback from our parents and community members that were there. So again, all of those materials and resources were provided to you, and I just wanted to see if there were any questions or comments or feedback before next week.
I had one question.
Sure.
In there, it said Avid in there. Is that something that?
You probably saw Avid in the old one.
Okay.
I provided you the 23-24 one, just so you could see what one looks like in complete
Gotcha. Okay.
fruition, and then I did provide that draft that's still having some minor edits to it. So I just wanted you to be able to see and compare the two. So Avid will be up. Yeah.
Terry, do you have anything to add since you were there for the presentation?
And, you know, it's one of the most exciting times of the year is when the deans come with their proposals for the different classes they have, and they base a lot of it on two things: needs of the building, if there's an area that seems to be weak. Secondly, interest of kids. So they have to combine that, and they came up with some great courses, I think, that are more up to date. I think will meet the needs of kids even better. But it's so interesting. You only add, 4 or 5 courses a year at the most, but if you look at their catalog, there are hundreds of different courses that these kids can take. It's unbelievable the number of courses that are offered in the high school. So, you guys do a nice job, and I appreciate it.
Hey, so it's less about the courses, but wondering if you can kind of just walk me through again, like, how do you determine and what guidelines do you use to, like, hey, these are the courses we're going to have? Obviously, there's some state-regulated reasons, and with the 8 different courses, how many of them were state-related, or how much were they like, oh, we're going to do this? Like, do you do a survey for the students, and they want to do X, Y, Z? Just curious, just for those that are, and also for me, I'm not super familiar. Last year, it went super quick, and we just approved it? I don't know.
Sure, that's a great question. A couple different pathways. So one of them is anything that's mandated by the state. So if we have formal standards-based review process, like right now we're in it for science, so you probably noted that we will have a new earth-space science course that's required by the state, and then we'll also be offering AP environmental science, which will account for rigorous course waiver. So that's one way we're sort of required. We don't have a choice. We've got to offer the course. Teachers will do it by interest that they have, or to your point, kids will say, hey, my friend goes to such and such high school and they have this cool course. I want to take that. I have interest in it. They might ask other students what they think. We oftentimes will put courses in the program of studies. They have to have enough registration to run. And so sometimes that does happen. And then the other way is an extension of something we've already have going on. So you also may have noted that we have Ceramics 3 being offered next year. So we have Ceramics 1, we have Ceramics 2. Those are both well registered and attended courses. Kids have interest, so we're growing that area. So those are kind of the three pathways.
Is yoga only online then?
It is.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
I know, that was one of the classes of like,
I was
can we
thinking
all
about
take
doing
that? 'Cause
Right?
I need it.
We can sign up for it.
It's such a great learning opportunity for
Yeah.
just.
We do have, in our health and PE department, we do have a stress management course that does incorporate some yoga as well, but it also just incorporates a lot of other management strategies. And that's been in the program of studies for a number of years too, and that's brick and mortar.
I was very happy to see that.
Yes.
Okay.
So, before I ask, I'll pause here for any other questions, because I do have a couple questions that will probably take us a bit in a different direction of the curriculum, but, so. Okay, so I've had some conversations with some community members, and so it's just interesting, so there are two different questions, and I don't know if they fall within the curriculum topic, but maybe it might be for a separate conversation. The first one is that, how do we, for kids who may not want yoga or ceramics, and as a community member, are there programs or classes where a person could get like a trade degree, or they can actually take a certification and they get like that thing? Now, I'm not well versed with our curriculum, nor in the high school space of how that operates, so that's one path. I don't know if there are things that you can take and say, hey, I got my certificate, I can go be a pilot, or I can I am a mechanic, and it satisfies the general requirements as well as the electives so that they can graduate. So that's the first question. And then the second one was, I had another stakeholder that asked me about college classes. So from my understanding, for students who take post-secondary education, they leave our school district, and when they do that, unfortunately, our school does not receive the revenue that comes with it. So when you've got, let's say, 30 students that leave, that's like $250,000 worth of revenue that our district is not receiving. Now, we don't want to discourage them from not doing post-secondary if they wanted to, if that's the path that they want to go, but that it does negatively impact us financially. So this stakeholder shared with me that, are there scenarios where, I think maybe we are already doing it, that we bring the professor into our school so that the students are in our school and that college course is being taught. It's not an AP class, but it's like a regular college class so that they can still get credit. And that credit, so you're taking a college class within one semester instead of an AP class that's 2 semesters. And so those are two separate things, but may not be appropriate for this discussion, but want to share, am I off? I don't know. So,
Well, you asked a lot of questions.
I did.
So I'm going
I
to try
did.
to go back to the first one.
Yeah, the trades and certification, and the second one about college courses, and is there something that we're doing around that space, or do you need direction from the board to say, hey, maybe that is something we should consider and give our students more options?
So by law, we are required to communicate and provide PSEO or post-secondary options. So just so you know that. So
Okay.
we can't shut that down. So that is something that we do have to do. We do offer a CNA course here in Lakeville, so students do have the opportunity, certified nursing assistant. So that is a wonderful opportunity if you have interest in pre-med or nursing, or becoming just a certified nursing assistant. You can start getting that as early as 16. A lot of students do that because it really sets them up for success to to do nursing or pre-med. They get a lot of experience under their belt, and then they automatically have a really great paying job as they enter post-secondary. We have YST, so youth skills training. We partner with several different community partners, Schmidt & Sons, QA1, I can't remember off the top of my head, you're putting me on the spot, who our third one was this year, but that provides student an opportunity to leave during the day, learn and work, like with Schmitty's, like how does all of this work? How does running this large operation, getting 12,000 students to school, what are the different job opportunities here at Schmitty & Sons that I might have interest in? So we do have a variety of certification courses. Minnesota School of Beauty is another one where students can go and leave if they have interest in cosmetology.
And they've been growing.
Because
the CNA one is fairly new.
Yeah, that one started last year, and
Yeah.
we had almost 100 students this year. And I just talked to Cindy on last Monday, and I think she had another 4. Like it's really growing. So I won't be surprised if that really takes off for us, but I can provide those numbers if you want them to you as well. And then post-secondary. So this gets a little complicated. Depending on who we have an agreement with, like Normandale Community College, for example, that's a nice one to have a partnership with because it becomes a push. It's a win-win for everyone. It doesn't cost them any money. It doesn't cost us any money. There are other universities, like we are part of College Now through Southwest State University. I think that's the one that you are referring to. We have a calculus class at Lakeville South and a chemistry class at Lakeville South where we have teachers who are certified. They have enough schooling to teach that at a college level, but we do pay essentially students' tuition for that course.
Yeah, those models they tend to be fairly expensive for the district. And I would just add one thing related to the certifications and the trades in particular. Based on our strategic plan and what we heard from families and students, this is something that shows up in the DDEs, right, that we have really been having a lot of conversation about. How do we expand those opportunities for students to make sure that when we say all means all, that we are providing the types of opportunities that all of our kids want to engage in and have a pathway for them, so to speak, where they can sort of follow their passion. So I would say, generally speaking, we have limited opportunities from my perspective, but it's definitely something that we'd like to expand in that certification area in particular. So,
Bill, you may want to touch on money in, money out, PSEO, and how that works.
yeah.
Well, yeah, if it's a true PSEO class where a student is going to another college, that's true. All revenue goes to that college, and we don't receive it. But in the case, like of Normandale, we do pay the tuition, but it's less than losing the revenue. So it's a situation where they still have opportunity and just costs us less than losing all of it. So in any case, we are losing funds, but it's a great opportunity.
And you can't limit, you can't say, hey, kids, you can only go to this college.
Right.
You have to leave it
Correct.
open, so you can't pick the one that is cheaper
Right.
and say, hey, here's where you gotta go.
But if the partnership with Normandale allows us to offer biology, chemistry, XYZ classes in a college duration, whether they go there or not go there, it definitely, we're saving money is what I'm hearing if we offered it.
It's not
internally.
costing us as much.
It's not costing
This
us
is
much.
costing less.
It's costing less,
Right.
yeah. But then there's added benefit, because part of PSEO is super hard for students where they have to get there.
Right.
And so you're really putting a box around limitations where they may be they're ready for that next adventure, but they just can't go. And so, while I prefer not to spend more, or I'm sorry, if there's an opportunity to have it cost effective for our district, but also give students additional pathways, I'd love to be able to explore that. Now, obviously, that's a separate conversation, and the rest of the board has to have that discussion and dialogue. But again, the more certifications, in my mind, that we can offer our students gives them more options to choose in different paths. And then for those who choose to go to college, PSEO is a fantastic program. It's a great financial savings, and but it's also very limiting to those who can't go because they don't have the logistics to get there.
Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, kids can also go through Dakota Technical College and take classes there to earn some of those certifications as well. So we do have a partnership with them. The challenge is, of course, it's 25, 30 minutes away.
Yeah, they got to drive there.
And they've got to travel
Transportation.
there. So
Okay.
there are those opportunities, but as I think Emily said earlier, some of them are limited by time, because kids don't want to travel 25 minutes, take a class or two, and then travel 25 minutes. Now they lost a class, so there's some limitations on some of the things that happen.
And I would just add one more thing too, that is sort of a complexity of the work we try to do around college and the schools, which is where our teachers get certified to partner with a college professor. So the college professors, in the college and the school, when we have that inside of our buildings, the professors don't come here. What happens is our teachers get certified through the college to show that they have the appropriate credentials to teach the course. Now, they partner with the college instructor or professor in planning and preparation, but the college professors don't actually teach the courses.
Okay.
Our teachers
Our
do.
teachers would.
So
Okay.
the challenge that we run into, oftentimes, besides the cost, is related to the credentialing process. So in order to be, and when I was teaching, I went through this process, so I have a firsthand experience. First and foremost, you have to have a master's degree in your content area. Most educators have a master's degree in education. So if I'm teaching chemistry, that's an example, I have to go back to, and I have a master's in education, I have to go back to college, pay out of my own pocket to go back to college to get my degree, my master's degree in chemistry, to be able to get through the credentialing process. So, so that sort of brings up, like, how do you support a teacher to do that? What does that cost look like? We have instances right now where we have it in one building but not the other because one teacher's credentialed and the other one is not. So then we have some inequity in terms of opportunities. So as we look at, you're right, like if you go out, it's really a transportation access issue. And as we look internal, it's a credentialing and a cost issue. So what we try to do is try to figure out what are the best ways to support our students that are really ready to have those experiences. So just a little background as you, around those two options. Yeah.
It just can be a lot for teachers, just to add on to what Emily said. It's great when they do it, but depending on the institution that they're teaching through, not only is it a master's in that specific field, but I know that with the one from SMU is another 18 credits. So you have to get your master's degree in that specific field and 18 more credits. So tough schooling and costly for our staff to do too.
And you have to go through, as Emily said, the training that college wants you to go through with their professor. So not only do you have to go and get what Elijah just talked about, but then there's another piece normally that you have to have some training with that professor on, this is what I want the class to look like, all that other stuff. So there's quite a money and time involvement for our staff to be able to do it.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of conversation over the years about, so these parameters were really set by the higher ed institutions. And of course, when you look at that scenario, it benefits our higher ed, it benefits our students in the long run. But in terms of organizationally and structurally and in terms of cost, it benefits the higher ed institutions across the board. And there has been a lot of conversation, a lot of advocacy over the years to get that changed, because we have teachers currently that are teaching AP courses, which are a college equivalent, and they're credentialed to do that. They don't have to have any additional credentials to do that. So it's been an ongoing conversation, but the higher ed institutions and advocates have been reluctant to make any shifts to that process for a wide variety of reasons that I won't bore you with today. But yeah, it's trying to work through that partnership.
Is there any benefit to the educator on the other side of this? Like they pay to get credentialed, then on the other end, there's no.
Well, with their salary
Yeah, I mean, they
schedule.
would move.
But let's say they already had a
But if they're
salary
maxed,
schedule.
but if they're
If
maxed
they would
out,
get
yes.
another master's
It's
degree.
not a benefit.
Right, no.
So there's no
I mean, they
incentive.
long-term could probably get a job at a higher institution when they're ready and be all prepared to walk into the University of Minnesota to teach with their experience.
But not
that
in the
they'd like.
K-12 system, because
think-
many of the teachers that have that level of education and expertise have been in teaching for quite a number of years and already have a master's plus.
Yeah.
So I'll pause here and, appreciate going down this rabbit hole, but I would like to submit a request if we can, and just have a deeper dive learning session. It would be helpful for me, whether maybe via an email or if others want to listen. I would like to know, like, what are the certificates or additional pathways students can take in high school? And then, well, obviously there's PSO constraints from financial and miscellaneous. If you want to throw that on a backlog, that'd be my preference.
We can include that in the WAU.
Mhm.
Yep.
The WAU that you get every month.
Okay, thank you.
From, as far as information.
Okay.
Because all you're asking for is information in regard to certifications and those type of things, so we can get that for you.
And I can provide that detailed information, but one of the things in the program of studies for SY 24-25, so the draft that you got, starting on page 15, if you're scrolling, or 28, 29 on the app PDF. One of the things that's new is we do have outlined the career experiences for credit, that you can look through everything right there. That is new this year that we've added, so you can look through all of the things that are offered, but I can go above and beyond and add some of the other items too.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you. Great, any further questions on that? All right, let's move on.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry.
Thank
Jill.
you.
No,
Thank you,
good.
Lida. Thank you.
All right, so we do have some policy updates. We'll start with Brenda Albrecht. She has some from the district policy side, and then we also have our policy committee from the Board of Education also completed too. But like I said, we'll start with Brenda, who's going over 403, 404, and 405.
Okay, we'll start with 403. This is discipline, suspension, and dismissal of school district employees. There are no changes to this policy. You will see in other policies, if you're looking at other school district policies, they may have language in there on a lockstep procedure that you take for disciplining employees, such as a oral reprimand, written reprimand, suspension, steps such as that. In our district, we have that language in our collective bargaining agreements, and your other employees are at-will employees, so that language isn't in this policy, but you may see it as the policy committee is looking at those policies. So just wanted to let you know that. Are there any questions on that one? And then the next one is 404, that's the employment background checks. There are a number of updates to this policy. However, these changes reflect very specific statute regarding requirements to background checks that the district has to follow when we hire employees. There is some leeway around accepting a background check from an employee if they've had one in the last 12 months someplace else at another school district. We do have some wiggle room to accept those. Our practice here is not to. We typically run a new background check. So just so you're aware, that's the current process that we use here. And there is potential for serious litigation if the district does not conduct due diligence in adhering to the statutes outlined in the policy. So for example, if we missed a background check on an employee and they had a sexual predator offense and we had them in a classroom with kids and something happened, we would be open for very serious litigation. So really important that we're just following due diligence with the background checks. Any particular questions on that one?
Brenda, is it still that background checks, there's different levels or degrees of background checks, right?
We conduct the same background check for any employee that we hire here. They all go through the BCA, they all go through a sex offender registry. That's the process that we have right now. Yep. Okay, the last one is 405. This is our policy on veterans preference, and there were just a couple of minor grammatical changes in this one. Nothing that changes our process or procedures in how we conduct the veterans preference when we are reviewing our applicants for hire.
Any questions on that one? Okay. So I'll hand it over to the policy committee. They completed 2 policies, 305 and 208. You should have received those in your email. I'm sorry. Go ahead and hand it over to you, Brian.
I'll pass it over to Bree, who's got her iPad, if she wants to kind of speak high level between 208 and 305.
Thanks.
No,
Wow.
I guess, yeah, so I don't have those policies in front of me, so that's why I refer to Bree when we get there. The policy committee has met 2 times, 3 times?
Three.
3 times. We had fruitful conversation on the first one on our approach and how we want to do things. Again, the Board of Education Policy Committee is designed so that 3 board members would review policies with the Lakeville community lens. First set of policy that we looked at was 208, which is how to develop and adopt an implementation of policies, so it sets the stage for the remaining policies that we review. We will review these in a 3-year, we have updated the 208 to incorporate some key content that was from MSBA. And then also, we actually reviewed other schools that are comparable, like Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Edina, and so forth. So we took some best practices out of what they've had, really strange of how others are doing it as well. But the bottom line, the 208 recommendation has been reviewed and aligned by the small policy committee for the broader policy board to review. I will pause here and defer to
So-
Judy and Bree if you got additional
Yeah,
comments.
and really, in the updates that you see, it looks like there may be a lot of updates, but I don't believe it's really changed the direction or the intent of the policy as much as it just has clarified it a little bit more and leveled some more consistencies and stuff. Because like in some of the policies, it says it's the Board of Education policies, and then others it says it's the school district policy. And so we just were doing a lot of more of the alignment and just making things a little clearer. So I don't think the intent has really changed too much from what the original one was.
Yeah, we took up some words that maybe didn't apply, or, things have changed a little bit, so just made the verbiage just a little bit more clear and more, for understanding. And when we looked at the other districts, that we liked our language better than we did most when we did a lot of comparing. So, I don't know, we thought we did a good job at, collaborating and making changes, and I thought we did. I thought
we did.
Yeah, we did. We got a lot done in those 2 policies. Yeah, there's a lot of red line, but yeah, the intent, we don't feel that it's changed.
So
that.
you're saying basically that the 3 of you all agreed on this and feel good about it?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Directionally aligned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So, so
Yeah.
Brenna, I've noticed a lot of the changes in the ones that you put forth to us where it changes Board of Education to school board. And then in these ones it uses board. Do we need to be mindful about what
Yeah,
says?
we're keeping them all as Board of Education.
Yeah.
How do I see them?
But if you read, like, if you're questioning where we changed some of that, the school district policy provides the Board of Education's general direction. So it's the school district's policy, not the Board of Education's policy, if
I
that makes
think the
sense.
only place you maybe see if you're actually quoting direct statute.
Sure.
And direct statute calls it school board, then we're keeping it
That's
school
where I'm
board.
getting confused.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
Because I see you changing it sometimes from Board of Education to school
Yeah,
board.
and so anytime that I compare the 2 documents, anywhere where it says anywhere where it says Board of Education, you're gonna see a red line through it
Yes.
because
The other one
yeah,
says.
yeah, the other one says school board.
School board.
Right, so we're keeping it all as, even though you see the red line, we're keeping it as Board of Education unless it specifically says that little phrase in statute, then we'll keep it the way
Okay,
statute.
so these changes that you guys made aren't based on statute, so that's where it would be Board of Education.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think the three big ones that I would call out on policy 208, the first one is that in the implementation of the policy, we did include that we will review policies every 3 years. So that was not in the original policy document. Again, I think as part of our role, that is something that we ought to be doing, so we wanted to make sure that it's in there in the policy.
It did say to do annual, and we aligned it with our
One-third of
timeline.
policies annually, it says.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what we
did
added.
to. Yeah, yeah.
And before it did, I don't think it was annual, it just said we would review policies. There
Yeah,
are
that's
some
what
that
it
might be
was.
annual.
Yeah, it was very generic, yeah.
Generic.
Periodically based.
Yeah.
The second one that I would say, that I will call out, it is section 3, development of policies, and then it is letter, no, guys, maybe it's not that one.
Well, letter D, yep, section 3, letter D.
Yep.
That was at the very bottom of the policy.
Oh.
Is that what you're
Oh,
talking about?
I haven't, nope, I apologize. No, that's not the one, it was letter C.
Okay.
So letter C, that policies may be proposed by a Board of Education member, employees.
Oh.
Proposed policies or ideas originally was that they were going to be submitted to the chair and the superintendent. We did broaden that so that any ideas that are submitted should be to the superintendent and the Board of Education for review. So we wanted some broader authority, broader awareness. And so the one thing that I would change, or not change, but would like to make a proposal for letter C is the second sentence where it says proposed policies or ideas shall be submitted to the superintendent. I would like to add a phrase to be submitted and tracked to in some capacity. I want to be mindful that while ideas might be submitted or policies might be submitted, it doesn't go into this black box. It doesn't go into this like we never see it again. We have no idea. In the world of product development, we always have a kind of a submission process where an idea comes in and then it gets slotted. Either we're going to work on it, or it's in further research, or it's pending, or there's a backlog, or something of that nature. What I don't want to do is that someday a community member might submit a policy, and it goes to the superintendent, and it goes to the Board of Education, and then like nothing ever happens to it. And so I would like some sort of, my preference would be for letter C to add some sort of tracking mechanism so that ideas are not lost. So
Isn't that kind of a trust thing?
for a community member, I don't know.
So we had a lot of discussion around this, and as you know, it's
Lot of
not
discussion about
in
it.
here.
This was one that was not 100% allowed.
In other words, it's 2 to 1, right?
So, and so with some of the discussion we had around this is that if we do get a proposal or a policy recommendation submitted to us from somebody, that it goes to the superintendent of the Board of Education, and then when we review it, depending on what we decide to do with it, whether, no, we've already got a policy in place that covers it, look at this policy, or no, we've agreed not to move forward with it, or we'll bring it to the policy committee to consider, that what we should be doing is finding, by the end of that meeting, when we're reviewing it, is make a decision on how it's gonna be handled, and make sure that it's followed up accordingly with the individual that submitted it. And then where it goes, that is for us then to manage it. I think what Brian was asking, if I remember correctly, is you wanted it to, once it did go to the policy committee, or whatever the case may be, to follow it all the way through, so that when it was finalized, we could report back to that individual that it was completed.
Yeah. So think about it when at work you've got an incident ticket. Ticket's created, it's submitted, it's under research, and then it's closed out. But because it's in some sort of electronic system, there is data that you can report on and say, yeah, we've got all these ideas, or we've received a lot of ideas that are very similar in nature that you can connect to. But the intent is that, we may get a policy or idea, and we may not do anything with it right away. We may not do anything with it for a year. but it would be good to have it in the backlog that if we're ever going to do something with it, then we can pull it forward. Or whoever submitted it can say, oh, they're finally getting to it. It's been 9 months, or it's been a year and a half, or whatever it may be. So in my mind, we probably won't get a lot, but it's a way for us to start operationalizing how policies are reviewed, how policies are updated, or something of that nature. Again, as a board, policy review and financial stewardship is like our top 2 jobs, and so those are my thoughts.
And then my feedback to that is, if you're a community member and you're submitting something about policy, and Bree turns around and submits a different concern about a different issue that's not policy related, why would my recommendation of a policy be weighted heavily and addressed differently through this monitor ticket and hers not be? So I think it's about the responsibility. I personally think it's, once we get it, we can inform the individual about where it's going and how it's going to be handled and what that process is like. And as an individual, they can take some ownership, or should take some ownership with being engaged and following it through the process. If we can educate them on what that process is and where, how long that typically takes and establish that, then at that point, they can have some ownership in it to follow along. And honestly, I mean, you're right, Brian, I just don't think we're going to get very many. I can't, I just think how we respond is really the most important piece here.
Yes, and I think you're right. I mean, how we respond is important, but then operationalizing it is also important. And so, if I submit this policy for, hey, let's have a good dialogue around the benefits of cell phones available in elementary, middle school, and high school, maybe that might be something that gets submitted. And then if it's submitted, when do I find out we're going to review that? I don't know if we have a policy idea backlog today, and if so, is it in Excel? And so that is what I'm trying for us to drive towards, to operationalizing the process of how ideas get submitted and reviewed.
So I guess my question would be, is this something that needs to be in a policy, or is this more like a board procedure?
That was the other thing we talked about.
If it's in the policy, then it's guaranteed it's going to be operationalized. So
if it's,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I would agree more with like, let's develop a procedure for such, and if you wanna say like follow procedure, then that could potentially shift based on how many policy recommendations we're getting, but that we have something that we do in response. If someone makes a recommendation, that's something we discuss as a board or something like that, and it follows a process, but I don't know that we need to have like a tracking system. Almost seems like work making from a, like, I don't know.
So I'm gonna say, just based on our survey, communication is one of the areas that's like a theme with trust. Maybe this part of that kind of would fit in that, because that's board communication, how we communicate with our community, how we communicate with each other. Maybe that's more of a discussion for that date on February 5th, where we talk about some of those things. And just at this point, like, we take the policies that everybody has agreed on, because your committee agreed on these that you presented, and then it goes to Brenda, and we come back. Does that make sense?
Sounds like a plan.
Well,
What you're saying is we're going to just move ahead with these policies as
Right,
they are.
as they are.
And I
yeah.
totally agree with that. They had their discussion regarding his topic earlier,
Right.
and apparently the two decided that they were going to go that route, and I'm good with that. If the policy committee can make those decisions.
Right.
but I think to follow up on this, and if this is what you're saying, Kim, is that when we talk about it as part of communication, and I think to Brian's point though, Brian wants a process not just in general communications, but specific to a policy that's being submitted. So that is its own piece of how we're going to communicate to that element.
I would support what you said earlier, which is there are many things that come to us in communication that we should treat all the same. So if it's policy versus a procedural concern in the schools versus, well, that those are things that we should be either sending to our administration or discussing as a board, and that is.
So we're
And
starting.
I'm gonna speak up for you again, just because it's, the other difference here, though, is that a lot of those other questions that come to us about process procedures, they get addressed or handled right away, and then they're done. In this case, they only get handled right away if we're not gonna move forward, or we can, send them to a different policy that really is saying what they wanna say or whatever. But if it does go into the process with the policy review committee and all that stuff, that's a longer process, and it's just not completed by addressing an issue. So there is a longer process to get resolution and completion to this, and that's where Brian doesn't want it to get lost. Is that right?
Is that happening though? I mean, I guess my question
No.
is like, what's
No.
the identified problem that we're addressing here?
Well,
Is it-
so the problem that I feel like that we ought to address is a backlog of ideas and communicating to the individual who submitted the idea if and when it's going to begin.
So there's not,
right now.
there's not a
It's
problem.
not a problem.
There is
But-
no problem.
But
No.
here's the deal, so sometimes, I think the conversation was around, there's not a problem, but sometimes you put things into place so that if the situation arises, it doesn't cause a problem.
So then we have that procedure of what we're gonna do on the next.
So
I
think.
can support a procedure.
So I think it's
but
just a
also kind of
process and a
like-
procedure, just kind of talking through this a little bit more detailed on what that would look like, and if that's something we really want to move forward with or not.
My question is, isn't that what the board policy committee's for? If somebody presents an idea or a concern, isn't that what I understood this was part of what the board policy committee was going to do? So you procedurally can put in place how that board policy committee is going to respond to that person. I don't know that the board as a whole has to respond, because if they just give you an idea, using your example on cell phone use, you're gonna have to develop a policy. They're 9 times out of 10, I've never had anybody submit a policy.
Yep.
You're gonna have to develop a policy as a committee to bring to the board as a whole. So isn't that the procedure? If it gets presented, it goes to
Yep.
you, you document it.
Yep.
You as a board committee have to develop a policy if you believe it's important at that time to bring to the board as a whole.
So the reason I would like to add the word submitted and tracked, because tracked indicates that we would be tracking the thing in some capacity and providing feedback to whoever. Like if someone wanted to submit an idea and then we decide to pick it up 9 months from now, it would be ideal to inform the individual, hey, we're going to pick up your idea, we're in the beginning process of discussing it, thank you for sharing, blah, blah, blah. The idea is then, if it's tracked, then it's in a backlog. So then policy committee will then be able to draw from whatever we need to whatever we feel is important to review and create policies around it. But again, I can go either way. My preference was to have it tracked so we can operationalize it. But if it's a procedural thing, then we'll just track it anyways, because we can decide.
We can talk about that in our next meeting along with the next policy.
You may have an idea that you might submit to Kim via email, not saying that you haven't or you have, but it's like, then how do you ever know, other than asking her, are we gonna talk about this? Are we gonna talk about this? When are we gonna get this done?
I would put myself in her place and say, I gotta follow through with that, and I would do it. So that isn't an issue with me.
Yeah.
And I think, your group decided on this policy, and I'm fine with it. I totally agree. The policy committee should deal with that issue. If they have an issue with that, they have a procedure then that they follow when they get the request. How's that? Does that work?
I do think we have to put some onus on the individual that submits it to follow up and see where it's at.
Well,
But to be fair, I think we need to share with them what the process and the timeline
Exactly.
would
They
be.
need to know ahead of time that this is not gonna happen tomorrow. This has to go through these steps. And then they'll probably be fine with it, as long as they know.
Hey,
Okay.
here's our proposal. We have 4 other votes that can decide on if you want to make adjustments to it, or you think, oh, I like that tracked idea that Brian came up with.
I'm gonna go
I'm
with
on
the original
bandwagon.
from the policy committee. If you want my opinion, I think we should. You made your case before them and really didn't get it, but now you're coming before us. And I'm not gonna
But
go
that's it.
behind them and
Again,
say, okay.
I want to be mindful here, the policy committee is not the one that sets policies. We provide guidance around our research and what we found, so.
And we extended.
Just wanna be mindful
We
of that.
extended this recommendation for him to share it with
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah.
That was us extending.
Okay.
it.
Don't
wanted
be
to make sure the
judgy
board-
as we talk about these kind of things.
So I guess my thought process around it would be, I don't want to put it in policy that we have to track it in a certain way because board members change and different boards may have different ideas on how they want to do that. Maybe they'll have a policy committee, maybe they'll have something else in place. I think it's better as a procedure than policy, but again, that's just my thought. Carly?
I agree.
Terry?
What?
What are your thoughts?
I thought I said them already.
Okay, sorry. Dave?
Agree.
Okay.
What'd you say?
Agree.
Yeah.
Procedure.
So my understanding is now.
It goes to Brenda.
Brenda's gonna take a look at it.
Correct.
It could come back to you. Probably not coming back to you next week. It's probably coming back to you the following month.
He added that tracking thing on there for you.
Well, that was just, because I'm not giving her something today to expect her to turn it around a week from now.
No.
She's got other things to do. My understanding was from a board, she'd get it. Now she'd have until next month
We
to
gotta
be
be
able to
able
bring
to
that back to you.
I don't think we have a process around that yet. I think this is would this be considered our first reading, or no?
No.
No.
Okay.
First readings take place during
Got
our
it. At the board.
official
Right,
board
so
meeting.
then it has to go to legal review, and then it will come back to us as a first reading,
At a regular board
a
meeting.
regular board meeting, got it.
And then it'll come back.
Okay.
Got it, so nothing. So,
Mhm.
so we're looking at generally, it could take 60 to 90 days for a policy to be revised or reviewed. Okay.
We don't have to wait for these to be completed and start the next series.
Correct,
So
yes,
they'll
yep.
start catching
Yeah,
up.
yeah. And so what we'll do is, these were the first two that we wanted to kind of establish, lay down the foundation, because it feeds into future policies to be reviewed. We'll probably bring like a lump sum of 3 to 5 that are ideally similar in nature. So for example, we're gonna continue on the 200 series, and we'll probably bring back 201 through 206 as one lump sum, so that when it's reviewed and if legal needs to take a look at it, it's not just ones and twosies.
And we jumped to 305 because that policy has to do with policy implementation.
Are you guys so I know
It's
we
crossed.
have reviewed some policies since we started on this board. Are you reviewing all of those again, or? Okay.
We know which ones they are though.
Okay.
We do appreciate your work.
Yeah, I think it's great. I was questioning the policy committee, but when we were starting, what do we want to do that for? I'm really happy. Thank you.
All right, so I want to be mindful that for a working session, we generally don't do any voting within a working session. But I do also want to be mindful that when we go into a closed meeting, the proper format would be to vote to go into closed meeting and vote when we come out. So at this point, I would like to say that that I'm asking for a motion to vote to go into a closed meeting pursuant to Minnesota State Statute, Section 13.D.05, Subdivision 3B, to engage in negotiations discussion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by David Anderson. All in favor?
Yeah, so,
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Okay, thank you. So officially move into closed session.